I think we'll go ahead and get started. And if we have a few more people jump in, they're welcome to join us as we go. So first, I want to introduce myself and the panel. My name is Audrey Savage, and I'm an International Communications Officer here at Lund University. So I'll be moderating our panel today, which is made up of some wonderful current students and alumni from our subject area law, as this is part of our focus on law this week in our subject weeks. So I want to give our panel a chance to introduce themselves. So Ihor, why don't we start with you?
Hey everyone, my name is Ihor. I'm from Ukraine and I'm an alumni of the master program in international human rights law. I graduated this year in June, so happy to answer your questions. Welcome.
Great, thanks. Leevi?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Leevi and I'm a second year student at the European Business Law Master Program. And I originally come from Finland, and now I'm doing here my master's degree in law.
Great, thanks. And Valentin?
Hello, my name is Valentin, obviously, and I'm from Germany originally, and I study the International Human Rights Law program, and I'm also in the second year already, so started last year.
Great, thanks. So just a couple housekeeping things that I want to say before we get started here with the Q&A. First is just that, the Q&A, where you're welcome, those of you in the audience, to post questions for us to answer if you'd like. The Q&A is there at the bottom, and you can also upvote questions. So if you see that someone has already posted the same question that you have, feel free to give that a little upvote or a like, and that will send your question up to the top of the list so that we make sure we can answer it. And because we are here with current students and alumni today, we won't be focusing on any questions related to the application, such as entry requirements or application processes, things like that. Don't worry, we have over 90 events that we're holding this year, most of them focusing on teaching you how to apply. So there's going to be a lot of chances to get those questions answered. So please feel free to join us at those other events. But since we have our students here today, we want to make sure that we focus on getting those questions answered about their experience. So with that, I think we'll jump right in. So first, if we could sort of just go around, I'd like to hear from all of you, perhaps what's your favorite thing about studying your program here in Lund, and perhaps why did you choose this program when you were first searching? So maybe we'll go the other way around this time. So start with Valentin.
Yeah, so my favorite thing about studying in Lund, I would say, is the diversity. You can't really see it today here in our group, but the diversity of the student group. So we are around 40 students, and most of them are internationals. There are only the biggest group are the Swedes, but most of them are from international, from all continents, basically. So that's my biggest point so far, that I gained through that a lot of different perspectives on problems I already knew, but so I gained and had a new perspective on it, and it actually changed my mind a couple of times. That's something I really enjoy. The same goes for the lecturers, which are also from different backgrounds, which is really interesting and helpful to understand the topics. And at the same time, we have many different courses and topics covering a lot that is, regards international human rights law. So to sum it up, that's basically it, the diversity.
Great, thank you. Leevi, how about you? What's the best thing about studying the European Business Law program?
Well, I would say firstly, I agree with Valentin. The people here, we also have a very international group of people who study the program. And there's I would say half are European, the rest are come wherever, essentially in the world. But also I really enjoy the course selections that we have. We have various courses relating to different aspects of business law. So I very much enjoyed essentially the freedom you have in choosing kind of your own path in the program on what do you want to focus on in terms of business law.
Great. And Ihor?
Yeah, I agree with both of you, because I also like this international feature of our program and the city, because it's not only people in the program, but outside the program, other programs, city as such, it's really international. I like that. And I also like that we have this academic freedom in terms of, like, for example, exams. It's not typical exams with a specified set of questions every year. It is very dynamic, questions changes, and you can decide what you want to write about, and you're really free in how to frame your answer. So it really allows you to be creative in how you answer questions and how you behave on lectures, seminars, and other forms of studies.
Great, thanks. And Leevi, you kind of hinted at something there that I'd love to hear more about, which is the flexibility in the programs. Can you give us an idea of sort of how the courses are laid out? Do you have most of the courses chosen for you, or do you have the opportunity to kind of mold some of it to your own interests or take any electives? How does that work for the European Business Law program first?
Yeah, I mean, the first year is kind of already set out for you. So we have, for example, EU constitutional law, then business negotiations, etc. So they're already chosen like during the first year. But then already, I think it's the second half of the first year that you get the opportunity to choose, okay, what type of selectives do you want? And then that continues to the second year. So essentially, then nothing is preset for you. So you make your own choices on what kind of courses do you want. And usually also with the first year, there is we've had the opportunity to also take second year classes, or I would say the moot court, for example. So there's even the first year students have had the opportunity to participate in the moot court course also.
Wonderful. And how about for international human rights law? I guess whichever of you would like to, to take that one, it's fine.
Go ahead.
Sorry. To answer the question, so I think we have over the 2 years we have 3 different elective courses where you can choose your own elective course. Obviously, you have several courses to elect from, and in the end, so the last semester is fully dedicated to the thesis. Mm-hmm. So, and you're also free, so flexible. So basically, you have 3 elective courses in 3 semesters, and the thesis where you're completely free. So I would say a lot of flexibility. Maybe something to add is that you only have 1 course at the time in our program, which was really new for me. So that is a bit different than other countries, I think.
Yeah, if I may add, I totally agree with Valentin about this 1 course at a time, because in Ukraine it's completely different. Usually have like 7-8 courses. And another thing which I liked is that some elective courses can be taken by both students from program of international human rights law and business law, and also from law school of Lund University, like Swedish students. So you can meet the people from other programs at these elective courses.
Great. And we do have one program that is actually situated within the business school that I know we get a lot of questions about, which, if I can get this name correct, it is the European and International Trade and Tax Law program. So I'm wondering if there's any flexibility, I guess, especially for you, Leevi, if you ever have those students come to take some of the European business law classes, or if you have the opportunity to go over to the business school and sort of take some things in that program, or if those programs kind of meld a bit. Because I imagine, I suppose as well in international human rights, but it seems like it would tie a bit more there to the business law program.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally have an experience regarding that. I mean, we have like in our courses, we have like Swedish, like in the normal Swedish speaking program also, and then exchange students. And there could have been these tax students also. I don't know, since I don't go around asking everyone. But I'm sure, yeah, there's it should be possible to take also those courses if you have the interest to do so, as they are still related to law.
Great. And we have a question here in the Q&A, which asks a general question about program intensity and working opportunities while studying. So maybe we'll take that one at a time. So first, how would you define the intensity of the program? Do you find it's very difficult, maybe compared to your home countries, to your previous studies? Or what is the structure like in terms of, are you in class all day long or doing more self-study? How does that work? Perhaps Valentin, we'll start with you.
So I think it's really a question that depends on you personally about the intensity. But what I can say is that is different in that way that you have, as I said, only one course at the time, and you work constantly throughout the semester. So you don't have really relaxed weeks until the exam is coming up, and then you study for 3 weeks. It's more like you work constantly. So you do a lot of readings, a lot of preparation for the courses and the classes. And then in the end, you have a take-home exam where you don't have, I don't want to say something wrong, but you don't have to prepare a lot because in the end, it's a take-home exam. So if you prepared well during the course, you don't have to start studying before that because you already know everything, which is important. So I would say that is different. And it's also really helpful and also helps you to study actually and to remember stuff because you don't have to do it in 1 or 2 weeks, but you have lots of weeks to focus on the thing and to prepare the content and the readings. So it's something I like. Sometimes it can get a bit hard to finish all the readings, especially if you're if English isn't your first language, then especially at the beginning, it may take some time to do the readings, which are of course academic readings.
Really, thanks. And Leevi, what about European business law? How would you define the intensity of that program?
I mean, I think the business law program differs a bit since the focus is on EU law, and like we've had people that haven't studied EU law before, so they're essentially totally new to this whole concept of EU and like everything related to it. So I would say the first 6 months might be the toughest for those, since we're going to have the EU constitutional law course. That is a very good introduction to the EU and gives you all the necessary tools then to succeed in the later courses. But that's what I've heard is the most difficult for those who haven't studied EU law before. But other than that, I wouldn't say, I mean, of course, there's a bunch of materials that you have to read and you don't have time to read them all. So you have to essentially know and prioritize the ones that are most important to a specific topic. But I wouldn't say the workload is impossible to handle. It's only like how you approach the readings, for example.
Definitely, thanks. And then the other kind of half of the student's question here is about working opportunities while studying. So I guess I would say first just that we are a small town in Lund and there are a lot more students than there are jobs. So typically we advise students that while it's possible to find a job while studying, you shouldn't come to Lund expecting that you'll be able to find a job that will cover your living expenses. It should be kind of a bonus thing. If you are able to find part-time work, that's great, but it's not something that typically happens to everyone, especially because the sort of typical jobs like working in a cafe or a restaurant, for example, a lot of student sort of jobs are normally for or prioritized for students who speak Swedish. So it can make it a little bit more difficult, especially if you don't speak Swedish. But I don't know if anyone in our panel has anything they'd like to add. Has anyone been working while studying or mostly focusing on your studies while here?
So I'm working for a German company besides my studies, which is manageable, I would say. So far I'm still here.
Great.
Yeah, I had similar experience when I started studying in Lund. I had remote work, part-time work in Ukraine, and I continued it up until the new year. So it was completely manageable to combine studies and working remotely.
Great. And I would say that's quite common, that if you're coming from another country and you can still kind of work part-time, perhaps for your old job or for a company home, that's more common than necessarily finding a part-time job on campus, I would say. But again, it's not impossible. It does happen, but you shouldn't come to Lund expecting that will be your main funding, because that could be quite problematic for you. Great. So another thing that I wanted us to talk about a little bit is the actual relationship with the professors in the classroom. So how do you find that to be? Is it something that's quite formal or informal? Do you have the opportunity to ask them questions outside of class if you need their help? What has been your experience there? Perhaps, Ihor, we can start with you this time.
Yeah, I think it's a common knowledge that Swedish universities is not about being formal. So it's very informal, and you can talk with your teachers as with friends using just name. I think it's a general thing in Swedish to approach people using just name. And also at the same time, I would say that the teachers are pretty busy. So when class is over, they would probably stay for another maybe 5-10 minutes, but not more. So if you want to discuss something later, you need to book a meeting to discuss it in depth. Otherwise, they will be just in a hurry.
Makes sense. So, Leevi, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that the relationship between students and the professors or the lecturers is very informal. I mean, it's very friendly environment where everyone is free to chat with one another and engage in conversations, whether it's actually related to academic work or then just your recreational activities. I don't fully agree with what Ihor said about the time schedules of the professors. Is in my experience, we've had or I've talked many times after, for example, a class with my professors for actually quite a while. So I mean, of course, it depends on their schedules, but usually, I mean, you have plenty of time to engage with conversation with if necessary. I mean,
Great. And I know one thing that I think makes the law school really stand out in Lund out of all the faculties is the location. So the law faculty is located right in the center of the city, around maybe 2 blocks from the central train station and from kind of the main buildings of Lund, which is quite great to be there right in the heart of the city. But what do you find the actual facilities are like? The classrooms and study spaces, libraries and things like that. I know this might be a bit more difficult for you guys, Valentin and Leevi, that were here last year during Corona when we weren't using the facilities quite as much, but maybe now that we're moving back to classes, and perhaps Ihor, you had a year here before Corona started, so maybe you'd like to share. What have the faculty buildings been like?
It's been only half a year, unfortunately, but I did had this opportunity to spend some time there. And of course, I compare with my previous experience in Ukraine, and it's hard to compare because in Lund, it seems like heaven, you know, everything works, everything is clean, and everything is well organized. I mean, it was just great. So there is nothing I can, I don't know, say I was not satisfied with. So it's very good.
Great. And Valentin, Leevi, anything to add? I know it might be a bit more difficult for you guys having not been in the programs as much or the facilities.
No, I mean, we had for the first semester, we were on campus fully, essentially. I mean, only the last part we went fully online. So I had and now of course that it's back to basics essentially. I mean, all the facilities are in great conditions, very clean. With the student card, we have access to these study rooms essentially that you can book. So those are for the students to use also for studying, or if you just want to have a quiet space for yourself. And overall, I mean, the library is brilliant in my opinion. So no complaints on the facilities of the law faculty.
Yeah, maybe something to add here, because we in the International Human Rights Law program have the great opportunity, because the program is together with the RWI, the Royal Wallenberg Institute, and their facility is right beside the law faculty or the law building. So they also have their own library, which was in the time of Corona closed for everyone except for our program. So we had our own personal library for 40 people, or together with the second years, of course, with Ihor and his colleagues. So that was fantastic. And we had 24 hours access every day of the week. And this was something I really enjoyed, to have a library where to go everywhere, every time. And yeah, that was a great opportunity for us, or is.
Wonderful. And we have a few questions here in the Q&A that I just want to clear up. Laura asks if there's anyone here who's graduated from the bachelor. Unfortunately, Laura, the bachelor's program in law at Lund is taught in Swedish. So we don't have anyone here today as we're focusing on the English taught programs. But perhaps you can reach out to the program directly and see if there's someone you could talk to there. And then we have two questions here that are more focused on the application, about aspects and things to be aware of in the application. Again, we're not going to focus on those questions in this session just because we have current students here in the audience and an alumni, so it isn't really relevant to their knowledge. However, we did have a session just yesterday with the program directors of both programs who talked a lot about things that you should consider when preparing the application, and as well for you, advice for their motivation letter, things like that. And those are both already uploaded to, or sorry, that session is already uploaded to YouTube. So I would recommend perhaps after our session today, take a look at that and you can get some of those sort of answers and at our future events. So I just wanted to clear that up very quickly. Yes, and I know we've mentioned briefly about that the cohorts are quite international, but what kind of size exactly would you say the programs are? Is it quite a large program or more on the small side? And what distribution would you say you have of international students versus Swedish, and also male versus female students? Because as we've mentioned, we have a panel here made up of men, but we have quite a lot of women that also study at the law school, as well as students from around the world. I know we're also quite Europe heavy here today, but that's just been a bit random. So yeah, maybe Leevi, we'll start with you. What's sort of the breakdown of the European Business Law program?
Yeah, I mean, breakdown from for example, nationalities, I mean, the most we have are Swedes and Finns. So that's like a quarter of the total amount of students. And then like the half overall is European, other ones are then from Asia or South America, wherever essentially. And I would say, I think we have a slightly smaller group of people than the human rights one. I think we have around 30, 35 people total. And the majority of them are female. So it's like, I would say 60 to 40% division between those two. So yeah.
Okay, great. And Valentin, what's the breakdown looking like for international human rights law?
Yeah, I would say almost the same. We are around 40 people now, I think. Most of them Swedes, I think a bit fewer than what you just said. So I would say 6, 7, 8. I don't count. And most of them are women. So I would say even 65, 70%. And the rest of it is, I think we had a small disadvantage when we started last year, because many students who normally come to Lund couldn't come because of Corona. So the selection of students was a bit different than normally. So we are international, but we are mostly from Northern Europe right now. And I think in other years, there was a bigger distribution between the continents, just because they were able to travel to Lund. So we have students from Africa or from African countries, from South America, not from North America, but a lot of students are from Asia as well. So we are quite international, yeah.
Great, and that's an excellent point, that this last year's intake is a bit of a exception to the rule, with the Corona restrictions making it difficult from some countries to come. But in general, we have students from over 130 countries that attend Lund. So no matter where you're from, it's quite likely that you'll find some colleagues here that are also studying from your country. Great. Another thing I'd love to hear more about are the kind of opportunities for practical experience or networking experience during your studies here. Do you have any sort of career events that the university puts on, or not the university, but I suppose the law faculty, or any ability to kind of get to know perhaps some of the PhD students or others who come and visit? What have those opportunities been like? Perhaps we can start with Leevi.
Yeah, I mean, university hosts regularly these kind of networking events. They might be more generic, so like essentially all the students from Lund University may attend these, or then there's more specific ones. And actually relating to these specific ones, I didn't probably mention, but I'm currently one of the founding members of the European Business Laws Alumni Network. And they're also building a similar kind of network for the International Human Rights Program. So I would say that now the university itself and us, the current students, and then alumni are trying to, or are building this kind of global network where the opportunities to connect with former alumni will increase drastically, and also to then find, for example, job positions. So yes, I would say overall, it's in the overall networking events, and the future of the programs, I think, are in very good shape in terms of networking.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm guessing it would be quite similar for international human rights law, but if you have anything to add, feel free.
Just one thing, that there is this My Career platform, which I was signed up for, and they have, I think, monthly information about different career fairs and other opportunities where you can find like job or just network and have some, options for the future.
Definitely, and that's a platform that's run by the university itself, so you can find a lot of different jobs posted there kind of across all of the disciplines for sure. And I know the career and alumni office also put a lot of time into planning events specific to, as well, if you're interested in staying in Sweden, what should you expect from kind of the working environment in Sweden, and what's different about networking or doing interviews, things like that in Sweden. So that's quite useful. But speaking sort of along the lines of alumni, Ihor, I'm interested to hear from you about, now that you're actually out in the world, sort of what you're up to these days, and how do you feel the program prepared you for the work you're doing now?
Well, I'm okay, thanks. I think program was really useful in terms of career paths, because first of all, we were suggested to find ourselves internship during the summer break or during the second semester, and I did that. I had an internship in Danish Institute for Human Rights, which was remote for 6 months. Then later on, when we had master thesis, I wrote master thesis on the topic I learned about during elective course on business and human rights. And just, I think, 2 months after I graduated, I was applying for all kinds of jobs in this field, and just recently found a job in business and human rights. So I can say that my experience was quite good in terms of finding a job just after university. So everything I learned about, everything I wrote in my master's thesis was really helpful. I'm really grateful to my teachers and the university. So it was cool. Thanks for that.
Congratulations, that's great to hear. And Leevi and Valentin, I know you were probably going into your thesis semester quite soon. Maybe it's a bit of a touchy topic. I know no one loves to be asked maybe about their thesis this early, but do you feel that's something that they've been preparing you for kind of throughout the program, so that when you go in and actually start your thesis, you've had that sort of level of preparation to be comfortable with that? And do you know, by chance, what you'll be writing about? Just for curiosity. It's okay if not. I know that's the the question no one wants, but perhaps Valentin, we'll start with you.
So in general, I think we are well prepared, or we receive preparation tasks just by writing take-home exams, which are maybe a small, really small example for a thesis, but you often get to choose your own topic. So you maybe receive some questions or some guidelines, but more or less you have to choose your own topic, your own layout, your own guide and guideline through the task, which is basically working for yourself and understanding what you do and your tasks, to set up your own tasks. And often our teachers or lecturers, offer that if we have an idea to write a thesis in their particular topic, that we can come to them and discuss. And for example, I have a meeting in 2 weeks or something with a lecturer of mine, where I just want to propose a few things and just see if there's something to get for a thesis there. So there's a lot of support and preparation for us, which is really helpful. And of course, now we're getting started and thinking about this. A few colleagues of mine are a bit, they're a bit further down the road than I am right now. But in general, I think you're well prepared.
Great. And has that been the same experience for you, Leevi?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same. I mean, beginning of the first year, we had a couple of lectures regarding from the library staff regarding like citations, proper academic writing, etc. Just reminding what it is all about. And then essentially after that, we've had regularly these kind of papers that we have to write, where it's essentially practice to the thesis that we'll be doing next spring. But yeah, overall, so I would say it's been like a slow and steady race into coming up to the thesis. So yeah, no worries in terms of, or if you're still unsure about whether you're actually ready to write a master thesis, I would say that within the 1.5 years that you're going to study here, you will have the proper tools and the skills to like successfully start writing a thesis.
Wonderful. And since we're about halfway through our time here, I want to remind our audience that if you have any questions, please feel free to post those in the Q&A and we'll try and get them answered, especially questions about our students' experience here. And perhaps now we'll transition a little bit over to something more about that, about the general experience. What has it been like being an international student in Lund? Perhaps what's the first thing that surprised you when coming to Sweden? Maybe we'll go the other way around this time. So Ihor, we can start with you.
It's a hard question, I think, but in general, when you arrive to Sweden, it's very different already from the very beginning, because society is different. There are so many international students, and also society is so diverse. You can see many different people, hear many different languages, and it was always a pleasure to hear about other people's experiences, cultures, and attitudes to some things in life. So I think I really enjoyed that experience, and it was surprising how different people can be and how different their experience can be. I remember one conversation during orientation weeks. One guy told me that he needed like walk 10 kilometers to get drinking water. I was shocked, but it was his reality before he arrived. So life is interesting, and Lund shows you how different people can have different experience.
Wow, great. Leevi, how about you?
Well, I have a very boring answer to this one. As a Finn, I mean, the change to move to Sweden isn't that a big of a deal, since I also have family in Sweden. So for me, it's totally normal to live here. But overall, I would say, like Sweden, as all the other Scandinavian countries, are very welcome and warm to foreigners and to people who have moved to Sweden. So I would say if you're this is probably Scandinavia overall is a very nice place to live, and you won't have a tough time living here, I would say, since everything is provided to you in terms of like social healthcare. You don't have to worry about those things. So yeah, very safe and welcoming place to be.
Great. And Valentin, I guess Germany is also quite similar probably to Sweden, but was there anything that really stood out when you first arrived?
It's also a bit of a boring answer because I've been to Sweden before I came here to study. So I knew a bit of about the country. I've seen a lot of the country before. And also for me, the language and I would say the society isn't that different for me personally. But something like Ihor said, but it's nothing specific for Sweden, but how international Lund is. That's quite surprising for me. So you're out in the street just having a walk and you hear 5 different languages, and you're surprised how many people speak, I don't know, German or another language, and you're just surprised. And everywhere you can get interesting conversations with foreigners and also locals. So that's something I wouldn't say surprised about, but was a nice welcoming.
Definitely. And that's a great point with the language. I know we have a lot of students who wonder about how much they'll perhaps need Swedish, or if it's okay to get by without Swedish. I know, Leevi, you speak Swedish already, as you learned Swedish in school, like many Finns, but perhaps it'd be good to hear from the other two of you. What was your experience as far as either whether you need to know Swedish to get by in Lund, or if you learned Swedish while you were here? Ihor, perhaps we'll start with you.
You will not need Swedish to live in Sweden, because I think almost every person speaks English as second language or second language. But at the same time, for those students who will do our program, which is 2 years program, you will have the status of immigrant, and then you can take SFI, which is a Swedish course for immigrants, and it's free of charge. So I took this course, and I obtain some like minimal understanding of Swedish. I can say a few sentences probably, and it was just for fun, or I don't know, mental health. But in general, you will not need Swedish to live here.
Great. Valentin, was that your experience as well? Great. Yeah, I think I would add as well that the university in particular always tries to publish all information in English and in Swedish. So anything that you really need at the university level, all of the websites and things that students use are always translated into English as well. So getting by from day-to-day life is usually quite simple in English. Great. And perhaps you could share a little more about what you do in your free time outside of classes. So we've talked quite a bit about courses and classes now, but I'm curious to hear what you find takes up your time outside. Are you participating in any clubs or any activities around the area? Perhaps Leevi, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if I'm not studying or attending lectures and seminars, I would say, well, now a bunch of my time is allocated to building the alumni network. So that's kind of school related, but still a separate one. But then on the other hand, like in regards to sports, I play badminton a couple times a week in a local club here. And then also now, I mean, now the weather is getting slightly cold, but I also during the summer and springtime, I play golf here at the local golf club. So that's essentially what takes majority of my time here.
Great. Valentin, what about you?
As Leevi, I joined a local club here. I play rugby, and yeah, that's a great sort of thing to spend your time with, and to also to get to know more Swedish people, which sometimes doesn't happen as much if you're only in your international bubble. So that's nice, and I try to discover as much as possible from Sweden, to go on a hike and to discover most parts of Sweden and of Skåne. And yeah, besides that, I work, so I don't have that much free time all the time.
Definitely. Ihor?
Yeah, so I did the Swedish course. We also had a reading club organized by one of our teachers from the faculty. Besides that, I think it's mostly fikas with friends, hiking as well, and just spending as much time as you can with people from other countries, because it's a great opportunity to do that. And I think when Corona hit, I also bought myself a ukulele and tried to learn few chords and play a little, but nothing very advanced.
Great. And we have a question here in the Q&A specifically for Leevi about whether you had a chance to meet with any business professionals while studying, and if there's a chance of being recruited by contacts you met while studying. So I know that second part might be a bit hard to answer considering you're still studying, but yeah, what would you like to share about that?
Yeah, I mean, we've had like during different courses, we've had many outside lecturers. So they're usually from local law firms or Swedish law firms, but then also we've had a lot of lecturers from the EU, for example, European Commission we had just a week ago. So, I mean, yes, a business professional itself, I'm not sure whether you refer to like CEOs or stuff like that, but then like legal professionals, yes, on a regular basis that we have speaking about current issues that they face in their everyday lives. Yeah, very regularly, I would say.
Great. And I think as far as being recruited or working in Sweden, I would also just add that quite a lot of Sweden comes down to networking. So I imagine a lot of that would be in your hands, that if you're the kind of student who goes to speak to the guest lecturers after class and, you know, sort of maintains those relationships, that's going to really increase your chances of sort of them remembering you and being recruited for a job there afterwards. So just with a lot of university studies in Sweden that are quite independent based, it's really a lot of what you make of your opportunities while you're in Lund, for sure. Great. And is there anything that you can think of that stands out as a big difference in kind of your studies versus from your home countries? I know perhaps Finland is quite similar in Germany in a way, maybe, but has there been anything that's been a major difference compared to perhaps your bachelor studies? Oh.
Well, I can start. I mean, I actually did my bachelor's degree in Estonia on EU and international law. And I would say the biggest difference between those two is that here we have a lot of seminars, which I didn't have during my bachelor's degree. And I really enjoyed this kind of lectures first and seminars next type of teaching method, which essentially allows you to first study the materials on your own, and then during the seminar, the professors and lecturers actually make you think about the stuff that you've just learned, and then think about them from a different angle, which really helps to actually know the background of the information and how you can then apply it in the future.
Wonderful. Ihor, how about you?
Yeah, I think except for this having one course at a time, I was also surprised with this amount of group work we had, because it was not something usual for Ukrainian universities. And also this opportunity to choose your own topics for your take-home exams was also something interesting, not common for me. I think these sort of things.
Great. Valentin, how does it compare to Germany?
Yeah, it differs basically a lot. So it's not nearly the same for me. So that's something I also really enjoyed when coming here. In Germany, I started to study with over 600 people. And basically, you are independent from the first day. So you don't have to go to lectures. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to read or attend. The only thing you have to do is pass the exam in the end of the semester. And if you don't, you have to do it again. And that's completely different here. So you don't have to attend the lectures, but it's much more like school. You're in a smaller group, 40 people. You basically know everybody. The lecturer knows everybody as well, as soon as you're on campus, at least. So that's a bit more like school, and they take you by the hand and walk you through the semester and tell you what you have to do, when, where, and why, which is really helpful. And makes your life as a student much easier, because you know what to do. And the form of examination is also really different. Take-home exams, I never had take-home exams before. So I would say it's a much more like school for me here, which I enjoy a lot, because you take a lot more input with you when you leave the lecture, when you sit there with 40 people and you can ask questions. Or if you sit there with 400, 500 people and you understand no word, but still don't ask questions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we tend to lump most of Northern Europe and then maybe Germany and the Netherlands kind of in as if it must be quite similar, but it's interesting that it is still quite different. Great. And I want to tag on to something that actually you said earlier, Valentin, about hiking and kind of taking advantage of the area that we have here around Skåne. So I think quite a lot of people, if you're familiar with Lund, know that we say a lot, it's very flat and that everyone bikes quite a lot everywhere, but you'd actually be very surprised that with a short train ride just to sort of different parts of Skåne, there is actually a lot of very different nature and opportunities to get out and hike and things. So, and then of course, if you take into account the rest of Sweden or even the proximity to the rest of Europe, there's a lot of things to see. So for those of you that have had that chance to travel around while you're here, what would you say has been the most interesting place you've been able to visit, either in our area or maybe in the rest of Sweden? Maybe Ihor, I'll start with you.
Yes, I think I've been to quite many places in Sweden during my 2 years in Lund. So I would suggest during the summer to go to Skanor beach and like area. It's quite close to Malmö. And then there are islands next to Göteborg. They are just beautiful, so definitely go there. And then also up to the border with Norway, there is this I forgot the name. Anyway, that's a good region as well. And of course, use this opportunity to go try catch the Northern Lights in Abisko or Kiruna. I tried that, unfortunately unsuccessfully, but still it was interesting experience to go there 17 hours in train.
Yeah, absolutely. I would second that. I actually, as you might hear, I'm not from Sweden. I'm from the US originally. So when I was a student back in the day at Lund, I did the traditional Kiruna trip. And the day we actually saw the Northern Lights, they told us it was a 0% chance that we would see them that day. And we saw them anyway. So you never know what you're going to get, but it's a great trip, definitely. And Valentin, how about you?
Yeah, unfortunately, I had the same experience as Ihor in Kiruna. We went there and didn't see them, but anyway, it's a fantastic trip, especially when you're not from that area or Sweden at all. To see like something like that, it's really unique. And some places which are closer to Lund is, for example, Falsterbro, which is near Malmö as well in the south, which is really beautiful. Where you can see seals, for example. If you like to hike, Söderås National Park is really close by. Only a train ride and a small bus ride. And in general, the southwest coast of Skåne is really, really beautiful. So I would really recommend just to go out there and explore the national parks, which are, as far as I have seen them so far, fantastic and absolutely worth every travel.
Absolutely. And Leevi, we have another question for you here actually in the chat. Umut is asking, what are some of the elective courses in the EU Business Law program that you have the option to take? And specifically, if there's anything focusing on data privacy or personal data protection?
All right. I mean, before I answer that, I second what Valentin said about Söderåsen. It's a brilliant place. So if you get a minute, go there. It's like Skåne's Grand Canyon. So that's an amazing place. But the electives, oh wow, there's a bunch of them. Let's see if I remember them all. I mean, for example, now I'm taking a state aid course. Next time we'll be taking mergers and acquisitions. Other ones are currently taking this big data AI course. That's probably the most relevant to what you asked. So about data privacy, what I've heard is that they've talked a lot about like GDPR and stuff related to then AI and what's the interplay between those two. But those at least, then we have like internal market law, more like in-depth course regarding that. Then moot court, as I said in the beginning, and yeah, what else? I can't even remember. But there's a bunch of courses that you have the opportunity to take. Mostly related to then IP or trade law. Yeah.
Great. And I'm actually curious just to tag on to that. Does the program, I'm imagining mostly focuses on EU law, but do you have the opportunity, if you wanted to study law for some of the countries that are European but aren't necessarily in the EU, or is it focusing solely on EU law?
The courses all relate to EU in some form. I mean, depending on the subject, for example, the intellectual property law, that's also has an element of more international scope. And also I think there's also the EU and international trade law. So those have also more international scope, but overall it's very related to the like business relations within the EU and the legislation covering the EU area.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And Umut says, thank you so much. Thank you also for being here, for asking questions. So we have a little under 10 minutes left. So if anyone else in the audience has a few more questions, we have time for just a few more. But I also want to ask to our panel, what kind of advice or tips would you give to students who are considering your program, perhaps kind of in this process while they're still deciding if it's a good fit for them, or when they arrive, some kind of things you wish you had known in the beginning to really succeed at the program? I know it's quite a big question, but Valentin, we'll start with you.
So start preparing early for the application, because a few things just take some time. For example, to get somebody to write your recommendation, especially professors, most of the time need some time. So just start early. Also, the English certificate might take some time, especially if you consider that you might not get enough points, so you have to retake it. So start early. And don't be afraid to contact somebody from Lund University. I didn't do that, but now I would say don't be afraid. If you have any questions, just get in contact and ask. So that's my advice.
And I would second that. Our office is definitely here to support you at any time. Those of you who do end up applying will be in contact the whole way through that process. And if you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us. And we'll, as I mentioned, be having quite a lot of these events where you can come stop by and ask us in person over video for a while. Great. Leevi, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my kind of tip would be that the like our professors and lecturers have made this, or actually 3 different Coursera courses about the business law. So what I've heard is that's a great introduction to EU law if you haven't studied it before, and that has helped a lot of the non-European students to essentially already have an idea, okay, what are we essentially going to study here in the program. So I would say that's my biggest tip. But other than that, I second everything Valentin said about like be early in terms of your applications, etc. Since I think Sweden is the earliest, the closest the applications. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Definitely. And Ihor, what would you say would be your big tips? And especially now that you've finished the programs, maybe even any tips for kind of going the whole way through?
Well, first of all, I agree with what's being said, and I will just add that also use university site and program site, because there is a lot of information out there, and you can learn basically everything about the program, about all elective courses, about specific like even subjects. Some presentations can also even be uploaded to that site. And in terms of what happens next, I would just say that everything will be okay, because when you approach math thesis writing, it seems quite you feel some anxiety as usual, and it's not really an easy task to write a math thesis, but it is manageable and possible, of course, because I did that, my group mates did that, and now I am an alumni. And in terms of job search, I would give this tip: please take some break after you finish. Take I know months, 2, 3, and then search, because after 2 years of studies, especially after doing this math thesis, you will definitely need some rest, and take this opportunity this summer to have some chilling time for yourself, and then with new energy you can get back and start your job search.
Great, wonderful advice. And perhaps in our last 5 minutes here, if you'd like to each share maybe why do you think a prospective student in the end should choose your program? If there's anything we haven't mentioned yet that you want to mention, but if someone's considering your program, maybe what would be the perfect person for your program, and why should they choose it? Leevi, we'll start with you.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I would say if you have the hunger to learn and indulge yourself in these different subjects, like in depth, I mean, this is the program for you. And the professors, lecturers, and the admission office will probably also appreciate that you're actually interested in learning these different kinds of subjects very thoroughly. So yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Wonderful. Valentin? Sorry, I interrupted a thought there.
No, I just I thought about how to formulate it well, but I would say you have to be interested in working in a diverse group and to understand and also be open to different aspects and different opinions, as every law student basically should be. And yeah, something I thought about before, you should also bring, don't stress too much about some gaps in your CV. So I think you should bring something unique to the program, which sounds more important now than it is. But if you have some experience or some background in the field of human rights, definitely put this out there in the application and highlight it, because that's what they look for when assessing the applications. At least they told us a lot of times that they look out for that. So they maybe gain some experience or highlight why human rights and understanding them is so important to you.
Wonderful. Ihor, we'll finish up with you.
Yeah, just two things about our program and why I chose it myself. First one is that I talked with alumni of our program, and everyone was satisfied with it, was really happy they did it, and they had some jobs. And as I told, program helped them in this. And second is that our program is in top 10 international human rights program in the world. So I would say it is very true, and I will definitely choose this if you pursue a career in human rights.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, as we're getting to the end of our session here, I just want to first thank everyone that has attended and asked us questions. It's been great to share. And I want to thank our panelists. It's been really wonderful to hear about your experiences and learn a lot more, even for myself, about the programs. I feel like I learn something new every day about different programs at Lund. And for those of you who are participants, I've just added two links here in the chat that I want to highlight for you. So as I mentioned, we're going to be having a lot more events happening throughout the rest of the semester in order to help you with applying. There's going to be another event with the program coordinators and program directors from both of the law programs later in November during our application week. So if you want, please check out that link. You'll also find the link to the recording from yesterday's session, and this session will be uploaded and added there in around the day as well. And then the second link there is how to contact us. So if you have any questions for our staff that we can help you with preparing for the application, please feel free to get in touch with us there. But otherwise, again, I want to say a big thank you to our panelists, to all of you in the audience, and wish you all a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.